Hello and welcome to Program 79. Program 79 analyzes the volume of the bars or of the symbol throughout a period of a week and seeks to find volume pivots and then draws lines at the top 5 ranked by volume on the chart, or in fact it plots those lines. So that probably makes no sense at all, but if we look at a spreadsheet, I'll try and explain it a little bit better. So if you imagine going back over a week, accessing the price and volume or price and tick data from a price series provider, and in this case we're just doing it at 10-minute intervals, but for each of those 10-minute intervals saying at this price we have this volume, and then going through the whole of the week, and if for example there is another bar that closes at the same price, then that volume is added to the volume that's already there. So we get a cumulative amount at every specific price, and you can see an example of that here on the spreadsheet. Now if you then take that volume and draw a graph of the volume, you'll see that certain volumes at certain places really stand out because they are what I'm calling a pivot. In other words, this one is a pivot because if you look at the bars to the left, they're lower, and if you look to the bars to the right, they're lower. And this, in this particular case, this particular week, is also the most significant. And if we just click on that, we'll see that that's giving us a volume of 8165. And if we just go to the spreadsheet and see at what price that occurred. Okay, 8165, and that is at the price 1110.85. So let's go to the chart. We calculated it for this week here. So if we look at the plot, we should see that the red line is 1110.85, and indeed it is. That's the red plot there. So that essentially is what the program is doing, and what it's doing, it calculates it for the previous week using a price series provider and then plots it for the next week. And you can alter, because this is using a price series provider, I've just used the 10-minute granularity. You could go down smaller, but obviously this program does a lot of processing, and I've done an additional video which explains in more detail how it goes about calculating those pivots. Now this program is based on program 57 and 78. This is more of a hybrid program tutorial in that I'm going to be showing you a little bit more of the code in this program than I normally would with a program. The difference between this though and program 57 and 78, not only is it just looking at the week, the previous week, but it's also using a price series provider, which means that we can change the granularity if we wish to. It's also using plots, and what I found is that plotting on the last bar of the week made the program a lot more efficient. It also requires data too. Now you can hide this, but this is the way that the program knows that the week is over, and we've got the same symbol as we've got plotted in 10 minutes. 10-minute bars we've got plotted as a week at the bottom of the chart, and we could disappear that just by changing the format. So format, symbol, data to, format, scaling. We could just change that to hidden there, but I'm going to leave it as it is for the moment. So as you can imagine, this program requires a lot of processing. If you have a significant number of bars, it can take quite some time. So what I decided to do is, once it had done the calculation for a specific bar, is it would write those levels down into an XML file, and then if the program is reapplied to the chart, or it's refreshed like I just did then, rather than recalculating the whole lot, the program knows where it's calculated up to and will then plot the lines that it's already calculated. Now it does make an assumption because it stores the date of each end of week. Now if the data is changed, the fundamental data and the end of week times change, for instance, that would make it not plot for that particular week. But in general this works quite efficiently. And what I want to do is just show you the XML file. So I'm just going to open that with the notepad. So let's have a look at the inputs for the program. and format, analysis, techniques, and format. The strength, that refers to the number of the volume bars that must be lower than the pivot to the left and to the right. So the pivots are the ones that have bars that are lower than them on the right or on the left. Ticks or vol, this means that if it's 1, we're going to be using the PSP volume. If it's 0, we're using the PSP ticks. And then we have the colors for the plots. Now notice that these are expressed as strings. We're still plotting them. And the int span, now this refers to, in this case, we're using the 10-minute bar for the PSP. We could change that, for example, to let's just go to a 5-minute bar and see what happens. And what I'm also going to need to do here is just delete the XML volume price file so that we're not using the one that's already changed the status to off and to on. So what I'm also going to do is change the print dialog to be true so that we can see what that does. And then I'm going to say OK and let the program calculate. Okay, so that is now based on the 5-minute bars for the week with the volume index by price. And you can see now that because we have the print dialog set to yes, it's printing this dialog. Incidentally, here I've got this to line up nicely, and the way I've done that is by setting the font to a fixed width font, and I've also created a little method that varies the number of asterisks just to improve the appearance a little bit. So what you will notice now is that having calculated the levels, if I refresh the screen, this will replot considerably more quickly. Okay, so I just want to quickly go through the main methods in this program just to explain what they do in a very brief way. So we have a method to sort the dictionary, and that outputs a vector, and we use that to sort by volume. Then we have a method to find the volume pivot. So the input is the dictionary and the output is a dictionary. So we put in a dictionary to find what the pivots are. We get another dictionary out with all the pivots. We have a method to plot the lines. We're just plotting 5 lines, and that's got a couple of inputs. One is bars ago, so that we can plot historically or into the future. The other thing, it takes a vector of the values that we want to plot. And I created a little method just because we're using a color, using the new color object, so we need to convert that back to a legacy color. So I just very simply created a method that just returns an integer, and that integer can then be put in the plot statement. We've got the print dialog, which I just showed, and that's using substrings and counting the number of characters so that we get that lining up. We've got a method which opens the XML. If the XML doesn't exist, it will then go ahead and create an XML and set that up for us. Now, the main processing is done in this method called weak data already stored, which is not a particularly good name. Sorry about that. What that does is essentially it looks in the XML file, first of all, to see if there's some data for a particular symbol. And having found that, it then checks to see if there is data for particular end of week date time values expressed as numbers. And if there is, it will then go ahead and plot them. If there is not, then we have to calculate those levels. So we go through the process of getting the volume for each price level. And you can see here we're going through the counting backwards from the beginning to the end of the week. We're saying if it's ticks or vol is 1, in other words, we want volume, then price volume dot items num to string. So that's looking at the index of the in the dictionary of using the particular price. If that is already there, we can add the new volume to the volume that's already stored for that particular price. If there is no element in the dictionary for the particular price index, then we can add it to the dictionary. And then we go through the methods that we've already looked at: price volume pivots and ranked and dictionary volume sort. Now, as I mentioned, I have done another video which goes through that, how that works in some detail. And having calculated that, we then need to add those rankings to the XML file. And now, in terms of the plot, it's normally quite simple. We can just, at the point where we've calculated it, we can plot 1 bar ago the using the vector which we stored of the previous week's values, and then we can plot the value on the current bar for the calculation that we've just done. That works great. However, sometimes you'll find a situation where there is an end of the week bar, but there is no minute bar that corresponds with that. In that case, we set this plot next bar to be true, and then we test for that, and we plot in a slightly different way for that eventuality. As I mentioned, I found that it was a lot more efficient in this program to plot at the end of the week rather than plotting each bar as we went along. Now, item search, this is a method that looks for an item in the XML file, and what it does is returns several outputs. One is the XML node list, another is the node itself, and also it will return whether there's a match. So it can be used just to detect if there is a match, and it will also provide information on that match. Then date last XML file. This one just finds out the last date time that is stored in the XML file for a particular symbol. So this is useful when we're trying to work out, do we need to calculate this, or do we already have the information that we can plot? And then we have the print dictionary. I've done another video that describes that. And then in the one statement, we set up the PSP and the XML, as well as creating new dictionaries and vectors and determining how many decimal places we have for the particular symbol that we're using. And then in this little section here, we have the situation where we had this strange occurrence where we need to plot an X bar, and we just test that that value 1 bar ago was true. And if that's the case, we then plot on the current bar the ranked vol vec LW. This is the previous values of the ranked vol vec, which is where we're storing these levels temporarily. And then we plot 1 bar into the future the current calculated ranked vol vec, which is a bit of a mouthful. Then for real-time bars, if it's the last bar on the chart and it's the last tick of the bar, then we plot lines for the current bar using the ranked vol vec, which was calculated at the end of the previous week. Okay, so that is, I know, a very quick, speedy run through, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of an idea as to how this works, and I hope you will find it useful. Thank you.